Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today we are going to address a defect in the channel. So for 2 years it's been very frustrating that we've never been able to cover loop puzzles properly because we've never been able to let you play them. But using this Japanese website we found, we've been able to create loop puzzles for the first time that you can play. So we are going to do some Yajilin puzzles today. Those of you who've never heard of Yajilin, this is a puzzle invented by Nicoli way back in the day, and they are super puzzles, really cool. And I've got some handcrafted ones for us to have a look at. But before we go into the rules and I talk to you more about how they work, just to mention that Chess Sudoku, which came out earlier this week, is now available on Android. You'll be pleased to hear. So I'll put a link under the video and you can go and find it there. And just a quick plea as well, if any of you have bought the app and you are enjoying it, then please do give it a good review or give it some stars on the various platforms. It seems to help with how they get promoted and yeah, helps with our sales, which we would be most appreciative of. Now, let's get back to Yajilin. How does this puzzle work? Well, I suppose we should talk about the rules. Here we go. Here's some rules. So we need to blacken some white cells and then draw a single closed loop without intersections or crossings through all remaining white cells. Blackened cells cannot share an edge with each other, and some cells are outlined and in grey and cannot be part of the loop. So you can see those in the example here. Numbered arrows in such cells indicate the total number of blackened cells that exist in that direction in the grid. So that sounds probably quite complicated, but it really isn't. So let's just pick a clue in the example. You can see this one clue, for example. That means there must be one black square in the northerly direction. And you can see in the answer, indeed, there is one black square. And note, the other thing to really keep in mind is that the black squares can never be connected to each other orthogonally. So they can touch diagonally but not orthogonally, and if you look carefully you'll see that is a complete single closed loop, and that's what we're aiming towards. Now, yeah, I've got some puzzles for us. Now these are from the website gmpuzzles.com. I've got puzzles by 3 different authors today. So the first one, I've tried to do them in order of difficulty as well. I haven't pre-solved them, but what I have done is looked at the suggested times that sort of grandmasters and experts would take to solve the puzzles, and this should be the easiest one. It's by the American constructor Grant Fikes, and yeah, he's a brilliant constructor, so this should be epic. And if you want to have a go, just click on the first link under the video. There will be 3 links today, and that should take you to this web page. Now, just to talk a bit about what you can do with this site. Now, if you left click on your mouse, you can see you can just draw loop sections. That's really sort of drag the loop around. It's really easy. If you want to put a black square in, you just click on the square like that. And if you want to mark a loop segment in a square, just right click on it and it puts a little dot in the square. It's really easy to use, and it's definitely worth doing that. And in fact, why don't we start with that? Because one thing that I always do when I'm faced with a Yajilin puzzle is I put dots in these squares in the corners. You may say, well, how can I do that straight off? Well, let's imagine for a moment that this was a black square. If this was a black square, the loop would, because we can't connect 2 black squares to each other, this square in the top right hand corner would have to be a loop square. The loop would go into that square, and now we can't close the loop. We've just got a loop end hanging. So that allows us to do some logic like that. We can do the same thing just slightly further away with this square, for example. In this square we mustn't create cul-de-sacs. So that's how I would start this puzzle. Now, I guess the other thing that's obvious about this puzzle is this great big 5 clue. Now, the 5 clue I think is forced because we could put 1 black square here. That's 1, 2. I've still got to put 3 more black squares in this 5 cell region. And given that they can't be connected to each other, they must do that. So that's all forced as well. Now, whenever we put a black square in, we should definitely put our dots all around it. So let's do that. And you can see that's very helpful. If there is a dot between two black squares like this, i.e. this is a loop square, the loop must do this, must carry on through the dot to the other side. And now how do we get to this dot? Well, we're going to have to go down. Now this dot, we're going to have to go down. Do the same on this side, same on this side. Now this is already getting interesting. It's interesting on both sides actually. Let's look at this right hand side of the grid first. You can see that we've actually got a sort of wall here dividing the grid. Now that means that there's no way we can get another loop segment into this right side of the grid. These two loop segments here have to catch everything that's part of the loop in this region. So if I was to connect this to this like that, we've now got a big problem. We're going to have two loops now, and there's only meant to be a single connected loop because we need to get this square into the loop, this square into the loop. So that's just not going to work. We need to keep these apart until we've picked up all of the loop segments that we can. So we can get that far quite straightforwardly. And this 2 clue is going to help us now. So this square now must be a black square. And now this square must be a black square. And again, we need to be careful not to close the loop off. Now, so that's all well and good. We've got the sort of start of a dinosaur here. This looks like the neck of a diplodocus to me. Or diplodocus, takes your fancy. Now, we mustn't close this loop off either, because otherwise we're just going to have a single loop like that. So this is going to have to branch this way. This 2 clue, that's going to have to do that, look, which means we can actually fill in quite a lot of loop segments straight off the back of that. How long should this puzzle take an expert? I would say 1 minute, something like that. So it shouldn't be too difficult. And obviously, don't worry if you're taking longer than that. I've done a lot of Viagilins in my life, so I should be a little bit quicker. Now, okay, so 0 clue there. Look, I should have picked that up, so we can do that along here. And where will we look for our next breakthrough? This square could never be, this square here could never be a black square, because if it is, that would be loop, and these two would connect, and we would have a big connected loop, but we wouldn't have got all the other cells in that we need. So that square is always not a black square. Now this 2 clue has suddenly become important. Now we can't connect, we can't have 2 black squares like that, so one of them must be on this side. And that's going to do all sorts of things. We mustn't connect the loop, we can do that. This top left hand square now, we can't have a loop segment going into that, it's a cul-de-sac, so that must be a black square. Now this 2 clue is lovely, because that means that square's got to be a black square, look. That connects this, which creates a corner. Whenever you get these corners created, it's very useful to go in and out like that. That must be like that now. This must come up here, and we're going to be finished, and we are. Lovely puzzle from Grant Fikes there. Now let's move on to the second puzzle, which I think was this one. Now this one should be harder. This one's by Murat Can Tonta, the Turkish constructor. Now we've done a few puzzles by Murat on the channel before. They've always been excellent. And I think I can't actually remember what the sort of expert time was for this one, but I want to say 3 or 4 minutes. It might have been longer than that, so don't worry if you spend a bit of time looking at this one and finding it harder. Let's put our dots again. And okay, yeah, this is harder, especially as I can't actually see what to do. I think we must be starting with this 2 clue, because we've got 4 connected white squares that need to contain 2 black squares. So this is like a domino pattern. We know one of these two squares must be a black square, and one of these two squares must be a black square. And that is helpful, believe it or not, because now if I try and put a black square here, this would have to be a black square, and I'd create a cul-de-sac. Don't create cul-de-sacs. So this must be a loop square, which means that square is a black square. This one clue now is filled. We've got our one black square in the row, so we can fill in some dots. And now, okay, now look, this dot here has made this into a domino clue. Now we've got one of these two squares must be black, one of these two squares must be black, and one of these two squares must be black. And so we've got the same logic again. I can't put a black square here, because if I do, this will be a black square and I create a cul-de-sac. So this square is loop, therefore that square is black. Now this 2 clue, you can see either this square or this square is black, but this one can't be black, because now if I make this square black, this square has to be loop, and I'm going to get a square there, and that's a very small loop, but it's not going to win. It's not going to win in terms of the puzzle. So that must be the black square, which means we get 3 loop segments there. So I guess this 2 clue now, is that going to be where we look? Oh yeah, this is lovely. So yeah, now this 2 clue and this 3 clue interact, because if this square is a loop square, then this 2 clue is forced to put 2 black squares there, but the 3 clue we know from the domino effect, that would have to be a black square, and now I've created a cul-de-sac. Don't create cul-de-sacs. So this must be a black square. That forces that look, which forces this. Now here's some logic. Yeah, we've got to be careful here. If this comes this way, I've now got a little region here with 3 loop ends in it, and I can't get another loop end in there, so this is broken. I can connect 2 of these 3 loop ends to each other, but the other one will dangle, so that's not going to work. This must come this way. And now, good grief, this is horribly difficult. This is a lot harder than I was anticipating, actually, so apologies if you do find this quite tricky. This 3 clue is, I think, where we look now, because I don't think we can put a black square here. In fact, I'm sure we can't. Now, why am I sure we can't? This is very hard to see. But what this does, what a black square here does, is it introduces another loop end into this region down at the bottom. So you can see that because of this 2 clue, we're going to have to do that, which again brings in another loop end. So now we have to count how many loop ends we've got in this bottom left-hand region, and we must always be trying to have an even number, because otherwise we're going to have a broken puzzle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is not going to work. However I connect these up to each other, I'm always going to have something dangling. So this square is not a black square. This square is a black square. That means we connect that up, look. This 2 clue is now forced to be like that. Gives us a few more loop ends. Oh, and now we've got the same we need to be careful here again. We've now got 2 loop ends in this bottom region, but I need to put one more square in for this 2 clue. Now, if I put that here, what's that going to do? It's going to introduce another loop end into this region. 1, 2, 3 loop ends in the region. No, that will not work. So it must be here. And what's more, we know this cannot turn downwards. If this turns downwards, it will be an odd number of loop ends. So it turns up like that. Whoa, this is very cool. Now this 2 clue is now forced. That's the last square, which means we get that square as well. We've got to keep this coming up here. The 3 clue, we can't now make this a black square because that will force that to be loop, and that will connect our loop like that. That's not going to be right. So this square must be the black square. That forces this. This square now, we can see we have this 2 clue. We need to have either a black square here, oops, or here. Now it can't be here because that's going to connect there and create a cul-de-sac. So that's not in. That goes like that. That is a black square. That does that. That does that. Look. Oh, we can't connect this up. This is very clever. This is very clever setting. Look, we can't connect these to each other, so we've got to keep going. That's got to keep going there. This 2 clue forces and now we mustn't connect these up. So this is all absolutely forced in order to not connect the loop. Okay, so now this 1 clue, I've not used it, so that's going to give me that. Again, I mustn't create a loop, so or too short a loop. And there you go. Beautiful, Murat. That was beautiful. Wow, that was very hard as well. So I've got one more for you. Now this puzzle, when it first appeared on GM Puzzles, it said it was by a mystery compiler, but the mystery compiler turned out to be quite a famous compiler, Prasanna Seshadri from India, and Prasanna sets a lot of the sort of World Sudoku, World Puzzle type puzzles. Very, very, well, an awesome constructor, so this should be brilliant. And yeah, it should be even more difficult than the last one. So this is going to stretch us, I think. We can put some dots in those straight away. The 4 clue here, yeah. So look, we've got 6 empty squares in this line, but that's not enough to put 4 black squares along. So we know this square must be a black square, which gives us some loop segments. Let's put them in. We'll take what we're given. And we've got dominoes along here then. So let's try and remember that. One of these sort of 2 by 1 or 1 by 2 regions, depending on how you like to think about them, must contain black squares. And oh, actually, I tell you what I should do. I should do this, shouldn't I? That's going to be helpful. But also, in this bottom row, there's a lot more squares that can't be black squares. I could never have a black square there because it's going to isolate. So that's the same thing on this side. So in fact, these 4 black squares along row 10 are in these positions. Look, so that means we do this, that, this. I don't think we can do more than that. Maybe we can, but I'm not quite sure. Okay, so what would we do next? Probably, I think we need to think about. Yeah, we can think about the dominoes, because yeah, if this square is a black square, what does that mean? Well, it means in this domino, this would have to be a black square, and that creates a cul-de-sac. So this is not black, therefore this is black. And I think we're going to be able to do the same thing. Yeah, if we do this square, that's not going to be a black square, is it? Because that's going to do that and create a cul-de-sac. So that must be a black square. This square can't be a black square, because if this is a black square, look at this square. Something's going to go in here and it's not going to be able to get out. So that square is also the black square, and that completes this 4 clue look. So now let's see how that's going to develop like that. That's going to come down there, that's going to come in there, that's going to do that. Now this is again, it's one of these sort of loop counting tricks. We've now got 1, 2, 3, 4 loop ends in this region. So if this is a white square, if this is a loop square, the loop would come in here and create a 5th loop end in a closed off region. That is not going to work. That must be a black square. Oh, and that's, yeah, that completely fills the bottom of the grid. This square can't be a black square because that's going to force that to be a loop, and we'll close off the loop too quickly. So this square is loop, which means it comes down like that. Oh, that one is a loop square because this 2 clue is filled already. So which clues haven't... this 2, we know we can't have one there, there or there. So this 2 clue we've still completely not filled. This 1 clue and this 1 clue are not filled. Now this is... Oh, this is very, very clever. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Look at that. That can't be there. Now, why is that? Well, it's another loop counting exercise, because if I put a black square there, obviously this one can't be a black square because that's going to create loads of cul-de-sacs. So you might say, well, that means that one has got to be a black square. Well, sure, but what's happened on the top right of the grid now? I'm going to have to introduce a loop segment there and introduce a loop segment there. I've then got 1, 2, 3 loop ends coming into this closed off region. I can connect 2 of those together, but the other one will dangle. So that one is not a black square, therefore this is a black square. Now this disambiguates the 1 clue. So now, yeah, this is very clever, because now, well, we can see easily this can't be, this can never be a black square because it creates a cul-de-sac. So we're left with a choice of 2 squares. But if I make that a black square, I would be forcing a 3rd loop strand into this region again. And we know from the earlier work we did that's not right. So it must be here. That does that. Now, again, I can't turn this way, or effectively I'm introducing a 3rd strand, so it must come this way and join up. Look at that. Now we mustn't close off the loop. So we've done this clue. This, we haven't done the 2 clue. That must do this. Okay, so now I think all we've got to be careful about is not closing these loops off too quickly. This must be like that. And I'm sort of cheating here, but I think I can see the solution. I think the solution's going to go like that and like that. Yeah, that is going to work, but let's not do it by visualization. Let's try and prove it to ourselves. Yeah, because if I connect this way instead, look what happens. This is forced, oops, this will be forced like this, and this square becomes unfillable. So we know that these 2 don't connect. That forces that up, forces that up, forces that up like that. Those can't connect, those can't connect. That forces this, forces this, forces this, forces this, and it's done. Wow. Wow. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed our first visit to Yajilin. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you want I suppose the two other main loot puzzles that spring to mind that we could cover in forthcoming editions would be Slitherlink and Mace U. So if you'd like to see those puzzles, then let us know in the comments as well, and I'm sure that we'll be able to accommodate that. And yeah, tomorrow I think we've got a Thermo Sudoku for you from one of the world's best constructors. So look out for that, and see you tomorrow on Cracking the Cryptic.